All right, today I want to go over the next step of our replacement series. This is what I want to show today, just how I put this together. And then that's as far as I did, okay? It's essentially the same thing over and over and over again. It's just a matter of what you want to do. And these are all the key ones. These are all just like the major motion pieces. And then after this is all done, after you have the entire shot done, then you would actually go through and start to add in some extra pieces just to kind of fill in the rest of this data. So one thing we can do is we can create elements inside of Nuke, and we can use those elements inside of Nuke. We could also use Photoshop, create elements inside there, and use those as well. So if I make this bigger, I have a couple elements. One of them is a circle. So if I rewind this touch, there it is. I have these circles. Now there's actually a little bit more to the circle than just a circle. There's actually like a little halo here. But the neat thing about how this is done is that because this is a separate file, because I'm already familiar with Photoshop and it's comfortable to me, all I have to do is get a general shape. Then I can go into Photoshop, change it to whatever I want, save it, and it'll all update. Okay? So what I did was to create an element inside of Photoshop. Where is Photoshop? There it is. You just draw it. Okay? Now my rule for this is that if you're going to draw something for use inside of Nuke and you're just using it as an element on the screen, you can pretty much make it whatever size you want as long as it's going to be a good enough quality resolution, right? So if it's a big element that's on the screen like a chart, you may need bigger resolution. If it's something small, you can get away with a smaller resolution. So those little dots, I made 512 by 512. When they came in, I'll show you how big they were in Nuke. I'm just going to merge it into my scene. And I'm going to pre-multiply it. And transform it. There it is. Okay, so that's how big it is by default inside my scene. It's like that big. Okay, so that's a pretty good size. Typically I like to make the items that I use twice as big as I actually need them to be. Okay, so if I'm going to make something that's going to be on screen like this big, I like to make it that big just so I make sure I have enough resolution in case I need to go up or go down or whatever. I have plenty of playroom. So realistically, I probably could have gone with 256 to get the actual size, but I want it bigger, so I made it 512. Okay, so start off with 512. You'll get an idea from the first one you put in there to how big stuff is going to get.
What happens if you bump that resolution to 150 and import it?
150?
Resolution.
Or 1020? You mean 1024?
The resolution.
Oh, that? Nothing. That has nothing to do with anything. Because that's just for print, right? So we're dealing with strictly pixels. It doesn't care what the resolution is because it only deals with that 1024 or 512 or whatever.
If you dropped it down to 40, it would matter.
This?
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't. Because I still have 1024 pixels by 1024 pixels. Because it doesn't matter what the actual resolution is, because this is basically when you're doing dots per inch, we don't have inches. All we have are pixels. Okay? So 512 by 512. Now, I wanted transparency on this. I didn't want to have, obviously, the background there. So what I did was I just hid the background. And I have these two elements here, this yellow one and this blue one. And I just saved it as a ping. Okay, round button. I'll call it round button 2. Okay. And then what I did is I just read it in just like any file we've dealt with before. There's the file. It comes in like this. Like, I don't know why it comes in like this, but it just comes in like that. But it has an alpha channel on it. The transparency is read as an alpha channel. So all we have to do is pre-multiply it, and then it subtracts all the extra data. So we go to this. I hit pre-mult. And now I'm back to that original shape that I had inside of Photoshop. Okay? So once I have that, once you do your first one, you'll get an idea. How big do I need this to be? I want an element that's twice as big as that last one, so I'm going to start off at 1024. What you don't want to do is go crazy, like make everything 4096 by 4096 or something even more ridiculous. It's going to be this big. It doesn't need to be that big. It's just going to slow your system down, okay? So how did I get this into the mix? The same thing we've talked about before. I'm going to ignore, let me just add one on here. It'll be easier to see that. I'm going to add a round button. And where is my girl? There she is. Okay. So there's my video of just the girl doing her clicky thing. And what I have is a merge. There it is. And I'm just going to merge this into there. Okay. Now, like we talked about, I need to pre-multiply it. So I pre-multiply it. And then I need to transform it so that I can actually move it where it needs to go. And then make sure, obviously, that I'm viewing that thing. Okay? So now I can move this wherever I want it to go. Now, the start of this is that we have to have some sort of backing. Like, what is she actually, like, touching inside here? So this is how I would create an element. I could do the same thing to create a backing. I could go into Photoshop, make a backing, drop that in here the same exact way. Where's Photoshop again? There it is. So if I made another document, now this one, because it's basically the screen that she's using, I want this one to be a bit bigger. My resolution inside of Nuke is 2048 by 1080, okay? By 1080. So here's a little trick to make your stuff twice as big, is I make it that exact size, then I go to image size before I've done anything, and then I can make it 200 pixels, or 200%. Okay, so now this is twice as big as the original image is, so I shouldn't have any problem with getting this to be nice and clear. So whatever I want this to look like, I can just draw it. So if I want something like this, something like that, there we go. And sometimes what you'll find too is you want to be able to edit stuff inside of Nuke. So as far as colors go, I don't really care what the colors are inside here because I'm going to recolor this inside Nuke. The important elements are what kind of colors do I want to do. Let's say I wanted a lighter border and a darker center, okay? Something like that. So inside here, I would go through and I would create that look. I'm going to go to border, let's say 30 pixels. That should be good. I'll make a new layer. I'll make this dark so that it's black. I'll go back to this one. I'll just do a levels on it and just pull it down to a lighter color. I'll probably lighten this one a bit too. There we go. Okay. So just really quick, there it is. So now I'm going to save this as a ping. And I'll call this screen BG. All right, so now I need to get this lined up with that. So I'm going to read in my screen background. And remember we had those constants that we set up before, right? We did these little color bars or whatever to kind of set up what's moving. So I basically just want to pipe that information right back into it. So here is, in mine, here's the chain for where I did that. So I'm just going to borrow this line and hook that up to, nope, not you, to you. All right, so here's my image. I'm going to pre-multiply it so it subtracts all that stuff. There's no transform on it yet, it's just right there. I believe in this one there was no movement. And then I'm just going to preview the merge. Okay, now it comes in obviously twice as big. It's twice as big as the image, so I need to scale it down. So I'm going to go to my transform. I'm going to scale it to, actually I'll just go to a new transform. And scale it to 0.5. And then I can just move this into position of where I want that to be, right about there. There we go. And you'll see my colors come in, and all I have to do now is just adjust my colors. And it doesn't matter where in the chain I'm doing this, but I'm just going to add a grade. and I'm going to adjust my gain. Okay, so instead of clicking these off and then adjusting the gain to give it some color, leave that on. I'm going to click the 4 here. Oops, I want this. That way I have all 4 colors, and then I could tweak this way. So I want to take away some green, add some green, take away some blue, take away some alpha, whatever. Now because I'm taking away the alpha after I've done the pre-malt, we're not seeing any changes happen to the transparency. So if I just cut the pre-malt, put it after the grade, we should see some adjustment. Oop. Oh, we're not adjusting the alpha until I go to that. There we go. And now we can adjust the transparency of this. Okay? So there's the image that I brought in from Photoshop. And one of the reasons I don't like to do this background inside of Photoshop is because it's very specific as to where she's hitting. And if she happens to go up like a ½ inch, well then I have to go back into Photoshop. And then I have to grab my stuff. And then I have to scale it or do something to get this to be bigger. And I have to do it to both layers, and it's kind of like a hassle. But that's how we could do it if we sized it perfectly. Or I could go into my transform here, change my scale to a 2 value, and then change the height to maybe 0.75. It's too big. 0.6. There we go. And maybe just scoot it up a little bit. There we go. Okay. So now that's in place. So now as she moves around, all of that stuff is going to move. So the camera does move in this case. So on that transform, I do have that animation. There it is. And you'll see that it just moves with it. I have it kind of locked in, so it's going to move perfectly with how that other camera was moving. Now I already have one I used to set up. This one I did inside of Nuke. Right there. So I'm just going to delete this here. Pop that in there. Get rid of those. Okay. Now for the one that I created inside of Nuke, I start off with a constant just so I have a size. Okay? Because a constant comes in with the same size that I've set up my stuff at. And then I can just add a roto. And on the roto, I'm just drawing it. Now here's why the roto kind of sucks inside of Nuke. Because I don't really have an ability to lock to things, like even holding shift. You'll see I'm not getting any lockage happening to this. Okay, so then I have to go back afterwards and kind of tweak some of these points. The other downside is that as we're manipulating these, it has auto key set on. So I have to make sure that I don't accidentally go to like a different frame and start tweaking a different frame, because then it'll animate this thing moving around, and we definitely don't want that.
Like, why is it moving now? I can't do nothing to it.
So if that happens, let's say we go up to, let me go back to my stuff here.
So you get to the frame where you want to work on it and then work from there?
Right. So let's say I jump up to 510 and I accidentally moved this like that. So it's going to animate this thing moving. So I can use this. I can say, go to that keyframe that's wrong and just subtract it, and now it'll automatically leave me with one keyframe locked into place. Okay? So now this is going to give me an alpha channel only. That's all it's giving me, alpha. So I'm going to go over here and say I want RGBA, so I can tweak all the settings. And then I can come down here to my color, and then I can pick what color I want. Okay, so I can pick, let's say, this blue color, or pink color, and I'll lighten it a smidge. There we go. Okay? And then after this, it's all the same. Transform to get it in position, merge to put it in the right spot, pre-multiply to cut it out. That's it. Okay? So same exact process once you have this element as far as getting it in there. So let me delete that just so I don't confuse myself. And you'll see here's my constant in roto, and then here's this other merge that's inside there. All right. There we go. So that's what mine looks like. Okay, and it took a little bit of tweaking to get it to be lined up exactly where I wanted it to. I remember what I used that for. Oh, I used it for something else. Okay. So now to get these elements together, it's simply a matter of merging stuff together. So here is my push button that I created. I did a saturation on it just to bring the saturation levels down, and then I added a grade to give it some color, and then the rest of this is transforming it, okay? Now because I have 3 different buttons inside here, I have to merge all these buttons together. So think of like I have this button, and that button. I need to merge all 3 of these together. So that's what is happening here. So all of this is pretty much the same. So here's a pre-mult. I don't know why that one doesn't have a pre-mult. Oh, because it's down here, right. Here's the grade, here's the saturation, and then I'm just merging this here. And then I have another one. This one goes here, 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 here. There's the transform, and then that merges into the list. And then I have this other transform that's inside here. And so if I were to look at this, merge together with the stuff, there we go. And let me see when the sequence is running. Oh, I'm not on the sequence, that's why. There we go. And let's just get rid of this extra one that I brought in. All right. So now if we go back, here's what we can see. I have this red sphere on here, this red circle on here. And it's timed up to move so that as she swipes it across, it's moving the red one straight across. Now there's a green one that pops on, and there's a blue one that pops on. There's also some glows that happen inside here too. You can see the glow lights up, and as she moves those around, those start glowing. And then when she hits the green, that one glows also, and that activates this stuff here. And then of course these things have to disappear somewhere. Yes, sir.
Is this the ones you made from a different, or is this using rotos?
These are this thing here I made as using a roto.
Oh, okay.
This I made using a roto. The little circles I used in Photoshop. Okay.
You animate more than one, I guess, shape in a roto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Every roto has its own stuff. Let me go to
Can you mess with lifetime and kind of stop it at a certain frame if you want to?
the roto.
Yeah.
You can. I've never done that, but you sure can. It's right here.
Okay.
So you can just give it a start and an end frame for that specific roto. So now for this, what I have is all of these things are animated. So I have to figure out some way to animate these things coming on and going off. So on these merges, that's what I've done is animated this mix happening. So when you merge 2 things together, just using the mix will allow you to control them going on or off. So just to kind of simplify this, if I have a constant, and this is a color like that, and then I have my round button, and I merge these 2 things together, I can control one or the other using this. Now I'm getting this like white going into green because this isn't pre-multiplied, so I'll pre-multiply that. And so now you can see the button basically fades on or fades off. So that's all I'm doing is just when I have these merges going into these other shelves, I'm just keying the mix. So I right click and I say set a key, I go up a couple frames, and then I turn that off. And then now I'll have that animation of that thing kind of fading in and fading out. Okay, or popping in, popping out, depending on how I've set my keyframes.
Is there any scripts like, After Effects had, or
Like what?
no opacity script, or
There's scripts out there for Nuke.
like opacity flashing and things like that?
Oh, for that? No. They're probably out there, but you definitely could look for them. All of these too, we can actually write expressions for them.
Yeah.
So if we really wanted to, we could put an expression there to, yeah, use a sine wave or something. You could also do animations inside of After Effects. You could animate something like for one of these extra pieces, animate something in After Effects, render it out with transparency, and now you'd have that element there. So if you wanted like bars moving up and down to show some sort of graph happening, you could do that as well. Okay? It all doesn't have to be inside of Nuke. This is just where we're putting it all together. Okay? So this was my first thing that I did, was get this red ball just to kind of move across and then get it to glow. And to glow, I added a glow. Somewhere in here, there's a merge. Where's my glow?
To make it glow, you added a glow?
Yeah, just had a glow.
Let it glow.
Let it glow. There it is. So I added this glow to the entire thing. Okay. And then controlling the glow, on this red one here. So there's that red one there, and then using that merge, I was able to control how bright it is at certain intervals, controlling how much it's glowing. Okay. So I added the red one going across, and then I just timed in the green and the blue ones, turning on as they go in. Okay, so that's all that happens there. The red moves across with her, and the green just pops on, the blue just pops on. That's all that's happening. Now when she comes over here and she hits the green, I needed a separate glow just for the green. So I added a separate glow just for the green. I tweaked some of the settings, like the brightness, like the size, and then I just keyframe this brightness. So if you look, the brightness goes from 0 before she hits it to 4.58, and then back down to 0. Okay. Now these things coming in here, those are all another roto shape, separate thing I brought in afterwards. So this is all the dots. All this stuff is just my dots, just getting the dots into that frame. And then this is my, oops, not that. This is my other shape. This is these shapes up here. If I disable this, make sure I'm viewing it. I'm viewing it. Oh. There it goes. All right, so now it's going off. It wasn't going off a second ago. Okay, so that's what these shapes are here. Now these, I drew one of these shapes. Okay, so I just made a new roto. Oops. And I went over here to the shape, and I just said, okay, where is she going to click? Right about there. And of course, you test it out. So I set this to RGBA. I went up a couple frames. And I verified that that is definitely where she's clicking. If it wasn't, I'd move it over. Okay? Then what I needed to do is, it looks like she's kind of scrolling downward. So I need her to be able to scroll down. So I need to create a list of something. So very similar to what we did on the other one, except in this case, I'm just using roto shapes. So what I did is I took this first shape and I duplicated it. So I just hit duplicate. Then if I go to the transform, this transform is only for that specific shape. So if I duplicate this, what I can do is just set my translate to like 200. And you can see how it just offsets that one 200. I think it's too much. 150. That's good. Okay. Then I'm going to duplicate this again. That'll be 300. Then I'll duplicate that again. That'll be 450. Okay, you get the idea. I'm just moving it up however many I need. Eventually I'll come back after and I'll just add text to this. I'll take some text, which is just right here. Text. It's thinking. There it is. And I could type in a phrase like lunch money. There we go. So now I get this box. There's my text. Now in order to see the text, I have to merge it with my roto. So I just merge the text inside here, and now I can see it says lunch money. Then I can go to my colors for my text, pick the color. So I'll just choose something here. Let's say blue, not that blue. There we go, that's good. And we'll darken it too. Go back to my text. I can choose a font down here. I think Chris would be proud. All right, I can choose a size, so I can just go through and scale it, or choose my font size. There it is. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you had text on this is that we shouldn't be able to read the text correctly because it's facing her, not us, right? So this actually should be backwards. I don't know if that will work, or I'll have to, yep. Nope. So I'm going to have to go through and add a transform node, split my scales, and then just take my width to a -1.
Well, I thought I was going to have to learn how to type backwards.
You use alt codes, it'll work.
Yeah. Oops. And then I just need to shrink this down some more.
It doesn't like when you scale it, huh?
No, because it's shrinking the text box of what it's doing. I'm jumping programs. And I have to make sure it's highlighted too. There we go. Alright. So now that's lined up with my box right here for the most part. I could obviously tweak that further.
Why does it look like it's transparent?
Because it's glowing. Because all of this is glowing, I'll eventually move this glow to a different area so I can have more control over it. Like I don't want to have my glow there. I'd probably put the glow
The end isn't transparent?
back
It
there.
looks like the end is transparent.
Oh, the N is transparent. Sorry. Because of my text here, I'm sending out the RGBA. So if I do just the RGB, it's not going to work. Multiply. Oh, sorry. On my colors, there we go. So now there's no alpha channel there. So then I can just go to my color here and adjust that color. No, it's still transparent.
I think everything merged in the area has transparent.
No, I think what's happening is I have my merge is transparent. Yep, see my merge is partially transparent, that's why it's coming through. Okay, so that explains that. Just set this back. And go back to my roto. Not my roto, go back to the merge, that one's good. Go back to my text. There it is. So we'll just leave that as transparent for now. Now, I added a glow to the rest of this. This doesn't have a glow right now, so I would add a glow to this and then just control that glow separately from the rest of the glows and tweak it however I want. Probably take the brightness down for now just so we don't have it so bright. Okay, so I have my text here merging into the roto. Now for each one of these roto shapes that I have, each one of those little boxes that I duplicated, I'd have to have a different text box for each one of those. So that's no big deal. We just do the same exact thing. We take this information, we copy it, we paste it. I go to the text, laundry money. I move that there. And then I, of course, have to merge it in to this little chain. Now we could merge it right into that other one. I just don't like doing that. I like to keep them all separate. So now we can stick this right there. Cool. Okay. So now how do we get this list to obviously be transparent? Because right now it's like not on screen. It's like popping off of the screen. It should just stay right on here. So this merge that we have here, this final merge right here, this is where all of our stuff is going into. And then this comes in all the way over onto this side. So if I look at this before any of that stuff right here, I have just my text. And so what I want to do is I want to go to this merge and I want to tell it to use a mask to cut off all the stuff that's not inside there. This area here is my mask. This is where I created all that stuff. This is where I drew out that initial shape. If I look at this right there, this is that shape. So I want to use that shape as my mask to cut that out. So I'm just going to drag this up to here. And then just so I can see it better, I'm just going to hold Control and drag a little box out. Alright, so now if I look at this, you'll see that it's cut off. Okay? And if I go down to where she is, you'll see it's definitely cut off where we don't see any of the stuff above that area. And then for animating this roto, what I have to do is I can't just add a transform here and move it, because you'll see that it's still cut off, okay? Because it's basically on my roto shape itself. They're cut off in here, so they're going to be cut off anywhere else. Now what I could do is just draw these inside the box. I can make a comp or make a roto shape and just layer them one at a time. That's totally what we did when we did our scrolling screens on the iPad, but I just want you to see this other way, and then you decide which one you want to use. Especially with the text here, it's going to be a little bit trickier because now I have to also animate the text moving. I'm going to go to my roto and grab the root node, and you'll see that as I click these, all of these are showing their transforms. That root node has its own transforms too, okay? So I'm going to take this, and I'm not even going to match it up to her right now. I'm just going to set a key, I'm going to go up a little bit, and I'm going to grab this and just scoot it down. Let me turn this off, make sure I grab the right one. Root, there it is. Also, I'm going to hold Control and just drag this over here, just so that's there. There we go. So now I can drag this straight down and pull it into view. All right, so now that's how I would animate this list coming down. Now, how do I take this and get it to line up with the rest of this stuff? Let me delete this keyframe here. Delete key. And I'm just going to set it to no animation for now, just to kind of clear it. I'm going to go here. I'm going to say set a key, go up a little bit, pull it down. There we go. All right. So now I have this thing animating, and we can see all the pieces animating with it. But now I need to get that text lined up. So I need to make sure that the text is also going to follow it, because if I look at it with the text in here, the text definitely does not follow it. The text stays put. Okay, so I'm going to rewind this a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new transform node. Okay, so instead of the text merging right now, here, and merging here, I'm just going to merge all the text together into one unit. That way I have one spot where the text is and one spot where my roto shape is. So I'm going to add another merge and just say merge this guy with that guy. And then I'll just, I don't need two merges there. I do. Okay, then I'll take this merge and use that on top of this. Okay, so now we have exactly the same look. It looks exactly the same. There's no difference as far as what it looks like. Here's where the difference is, though, is that once I have all of the text merged together, I can make a new transform for the text, and I can animate that transform coming down. Go here. You can see how I can pull this down, and I could even take my roto. There, I don't need this. Okay, so here's this transform. Here is my roto's transform, and I can right click. Oops, let me make sure I'm clicked on my root. There we go. I can right click and drag this onto here. Middle click. Come on. We'll just do it manually. I'm going to copy the links. I'm going to right click on this and say paste absolute. Okay? So what that does is it links those together, or it should have linked those together. Why didn't it link those together?
It should do it.
Right. That's what it should have done. Okay. Come on. find to copy. Let's try copying the animation this time. And paste. Absolute. There we go. Oh, that didn't work before. Alright, so now we have this coming down. Right, my text is cut off because the same issue we're running into where this text that's here was originally put up here, so it cuts it off automatically. So one thing I can do to kind of correct that is to just put a constant in and just make the constant huge, 2048 by 1080. And make sure I have an alpha on here. Oops, maybe bigger than 2048. There we go. No, that's not going to work. Where's my transforms? There they are. That's not good. Oh, there we go. Let me make sure that all my transforms on these do not have black outside, because that would definitely get rid of that. And that's still there. Merge, over, yes. Union, yes. All right. I've clipped something. There it is. Clip to format. There we go. No clip. There we go. So on each piece of text, I would just tell it not to clip. And then the roto shape 2 has that same thing, so we could also not clip the roto shape, and that would work also. Okay. So now all of these work together. So now as this comes down, you can see how easy that was just to get all of these things kind of linked up together. Okay. Now again, this is one workflow. You don't have to do it this way. You could draw all of these text boxes out in Photoshop, lay them out, just type the text in there, and then bring it in. Okay. If you decided at any point, you're like, okay, well, I now want, she touches a button, I want that button to glow, we can isolate it and have that thing glow. So right now, at this point, right here, everything's glowing. So regardless of what got hit, everything gets glowed. So if I go to my glow and I play with the brightness of this, everything glows uniformly. Okay? But if I wanted just one thing to glow, I can specify that using a roto. That's what this thing is for. I can specify where that glow is going to happen. If I go to a brand new roto shape and I drag this arrow to the roto shape, let me turn the glow like crazy up, like that. It's not showing anything now because my roto is controlling it. I'm just going to go into my shapes here and just specify I want this to glow. And then of course shrink it down so that the other pieces are not affected. Come on. Oops, I'm on the wrong button. There we go. So now when I go to this glow and I start playing with that slider, you can see it's only affecting the one because I've used that roto as kind of like a mask to do that to it. And that laundry room needs to come over just a skosh. Oh, because I put an F at the end. Where that came from. There we go. Okay. So these are the tools you're going to use throughout the rest of this. So you're going to go through and add elements to all those hits. So as she hits something and drags it, hits something and moves it, there's going to be a merge in there. There's going to be a transform in there. There's going to be most likely a pre-mult in there because you've pre-mult something. And then obviously yours will be a little bit cleaner than what I'm showing here. But try to find the best way that you can organize your stuff to kind of make sense. Use the little control thing to add little dots so that your stuff is easy to read. like that. I'll merge this here. I'll move this down there. There you go. It's much nicer, much neater. I don't need that. And then you also want to use your drop boxes so that you can grab your stuff and put a drop box there so we know what the item is. Now, once you've gone through and you've set this up and you have that first shot, the first shot is really neat because it's you get the whole screen in it, especially if you did it the way I showed on mine. You get the whole screen in it, so you really get a good feel for what's happening inside that shot. So you get a good idea of what's in there. And then if you're like, okay, well now I'm ready for the second shot, here's this element plus all those other random elements you want to use. All we have to do is grab that element, this here and this here, those are my elements, and then just drop those in where it would be applicable. So right here, this is where I created that. So I would just drop this there. And then when we go to that next shot, you'll see that she has that screen right next to her. There's no glow on it yet. There's no transparency. I haven't adjusted any of the mergings. There it is. But now we'll see how we can create just that exact look of what we have there. There we go. So now we have the glow. We would have those other elements on there as well. Okay? So do the first one. Make sure you're understanding the process for all of this. You can see it's going to be huge. This, so far, is that first shot. And I'm not even done with the first shot yet. Oops, I missed you. I missed you again. There we go. Okay, so you're going to do that same thing to the second shot, the same thing to the third, the fourth, the fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 shots. So you do it to all 5 shots. Now when we get to something like the keyboard here, we don't even see the screen inside the shot. So our main focus is going to be the keyboard. Our main focus is going to be putting that element on top of there and then making it look like her fingers are actually typing it. So we're actually going to have to do a little bit of rotoscoping and masking out of those fingertips to make sure it looks like she's actually hitting keys and they're not just floating on top of her fingers. When we get that done, then we can use that same keyboard in all these other shots. So when she's here, let me just paste my new stuff in here, drop that there, add a little glow, adjust my opacity. There we go. So you can see how universal this is. Once you have it set up on one, it's just a matter of copying those same nodes and using it over and over again. You could also do yeah, copy as clone, that's right. If you, I can't clone a roto? Never mind. Just ignore what I just said. Just copy it and then reuse it. The other thing you could do is just link to it. I think that's going to be a bit more tricky. Like if I tried to, that's my checkerboard. If I tried to take this link and drag it all the way over here, that's going to make a big mess because I have all these arrows going there. I'm going to have a harder time controlling all that stuff. So you're better off just copying it. Okay, but the process is going to be exactly the same. Once you've done that first one, that's a pretty head-on shot. Should be pretty simplistic. And then you move on to the next shots, okay? And then we'll start duplicating. So this whole thing here should take about 2 weeks. So I'm estimating that on April 13th, we'll be done with this shot, okay? And then we'll move on to the next one, and that only gives us about another month left to work on things, okay? And so that last project or two, we'll be using that Warwick Castle again, so the 3D one, the guy or the castle moving, and then we'll also try to get the other one in here, which was, nope, not that one. I don't think I copied it on here. The other one of the guy with the green screen rolling on the floor. So we'll try to also do something with that as well, okay, time permitting. So that's going to be it for the rest of the semester. We got this one 2 weeks, the next one 2 weeks, and then another 2 weeks on the last one. Okie dokie? All right.